Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants.
Welcome back to Fort Worth 148's podcast. My name is Bette Hamilton. I am a past master of Fort Worth Lodge number 148. And today I have a very special guest with me. I have my wife. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Bette Hamilton.
Usually we have authors, Masons from around the state or nationally. We've had past Grand Masters. But one of the things we usually don't talk about, and I think we should talk about, is Masonry and how it affects the household. Masons can't be Masons in isolation if they're married. If they're in a relationship, Masonry takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of money. And the more active you are, the more time and more money it takes. And so today's episode is going to focus on the other side of the coin. With that, my wife has agreed to be on the episode. I'd like to thank her very much. Today, as we're recording this, it's actually our 26th wedding anniversary. We have been married for quite a while, but our relationship goes back further than that, and it even goes back to before I was a Mason. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Bette?
Yes.
Was Masonry a part of your family while you were growing up?
Yes. My grandfather, my mom's dad, his name was Gilmer Ellington. He was a very active Mason. So was my grandmother, his wife. Her name was Pearlie Burdine Ellington. And even after they got divorced, they were both extremely active. My grandmother got, I believe, her 75-year pin in Eastern Star before she passed away. And unfortunately, my grandfather passed away when I was about 5 years old, so I don't know how long he was in Masonry. Masonry was a very big part of my family. My mom was also in Rainbow. All of her sisters, my Aunt Carol was also in Rainbow. My mom's best friend, who is like my aunt to me, her name is Anne, my Aunt City. She also was in Rainbow, and her sister, my Aunt Lynn. And so yeah, it was a big part of my family. And when I turned 11 years old, my mom talked to me about Rainbow and also Job's Daughter, and they asked me which one I was interested in. After listening to them, kind of learning, how whenever you get a prospect, how you tell them about the organization and everything, I decided that Rainbow was more for me. So I decided to join Rainbow when I was 11 years old.
But you had cousins in Job's Daughters?
Yes, I did. My cousin Erin, she was in Job's.
So, and this is in Oklahoma, by the way,
yes,
for reference.
Everything was in Oklahoma.
Joining Rainbow, your mother wasn't your
mother
advisor?
No. Actually, when I first joined Rainbow, my grandmother was my mother advisor. And then my grandmother stepped down and we got a new mother advisor. Her name was Anna Jennings. And Anna Jennings was my mother advisor from the time I was about 13 years old until I earned my majority.
What did you think of Rainbow growing up?
I loved it.
Okay.
I really think Rainbow changed my life. I think it made me a better person. It made me a more caring individual, I think. It humbled me a lot. It made me want to give to charities and to help other people, because that's what we did in Rainbow. I mean, that wasn't all that we did. And then I got to wear pretty dresses and have crowns, and I love that too. Like, I'm not gonna lie, put me in a dress with a pretty crown, I'm gonna be happy.
Did it teach you anything that you would feel helped create the person you are today? Anything about leadership, how you compose yourself?
A lot, because it taught me a lot about leadership, definitely. I was blessed enough to be worthy advisor twice. I was worthy advisor when I was about 12 years old, and then I became worthy advisor again when I was about 17 or 18 years old. And definitely the two different times was dramatic, because when I was younger, I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a good idea. I was still very new to Rainbow. And then when I became a worthy advisor, when I was voted in again, because we had a young lady who had to step out of the line because her father was in the military and they got stationed somewhere else. When I was voted in to become the worthy advisor again, right before my 18th birthday, it was a completely different experience. Being older, being a little bit more mature, knowing the leadership skills and memorization. Like, my memory skills were really good. I was great at ritual. And that was something that really helped me in the long run becoming an adult, because even in all the jobs I've ever had, my memory helps me so much, because I memorize so many things by the way I was taught in Rainbow of how to remember ritual. It really helps me with my everyday job.
And were you involved at the state level?
I was. I started as a Grand Page, and then after I became a Grand Page, I became a Grand Personal Page to Miss Patty Flynn. Then I was a Grand Representative to North Carolina first, and then I was a Grand Representative to Patty Flynn and Kansas representative. The next year, I became Grand Outer Observer for the Grand Line. My very last year I was in Rainbow, I became the Grand Cross Marshal of the Grand Cross of Color degree team of the state of Oklahoma, which was my highest title.
So you had to do a lot of traveling.
Yes.
In the youth organization.
Yes. Very much so. Every month we had something that we had to do.
And is that maybe why you're so lenient about the travel I do?
Yes. Because being in the Grand Line at a very young age, knowing that every single month I had to go to an exempt somewhere in the state of Oklahoma. Sometimes I did have to go out of the state when I had to go to Kansas and North Carolina as well. But most of the time it was all in state, and every single month we had a different exemplification, and we had to go. It was a requirement to be a grand officer. You were required to go to the exempts every single month. Very unusual for you to ever get a pass, I guess, for you not to show up if you were a grand officer. The only time I was ever able to get one to where I wasn't able to go was I had a school function. I was in ROTC and I was a first lieutenant, and I had a competition that I had to perform my female unarmed drill team, and we went to a competition. We were at state, and I had to go because not only was it a grade, but we were also competing for state, and so Rainbow did give me the okay to just miss Saturday, but I still had to show up on Sunday.
This was around, at the end of your Rainbow careers, around the time we started dating.
Yep, that was 95, 96.
I was 20.
Yep.
You had just turned 19.
Yep.
I have no family members that are Masons at all, but I knew from reading a book, I had come across Freemasonry when I was about 18 years old, and I knew I wanted to become a Mason after I started looking into the history, its association with like George Washington, Ben Franklin, Paul Revere, some of the greats in American history. And I knew I wanted to be part of that. However, at the time, you had to be 21. So we started dating when I was 20.
Yep.
I wasn't a Mason yet because I wasn't of proper age at the time. And it just so happened that somehow we got on the conversation about Masonry.
You actually, the way that conversation happened, and I do remember this, was I asked you to take me to my Rainbow dance.
Oh, that's right, in Guthrie.
In Guthrie.
Okay.
I asked you to take me to my Rainbow dance, and you're like, what's Rainbow? And I explained, I was like, do you know what the Masons are? And you're like, yes. I was like, this is the young ladies' version of Masonry. And you're like, oh, is it attached to Masonry? And I was like, yes, it is. And that's how we got on the conversation. And if you remember, when we went up to Guthrie for my Rainbow dance, you actually met Gary McDowell there. And that's where you met Gary, and that's how you got on the subject of talking about Masonry, because I introduced you to Gary, and you and Gary started talking about it, and you showed him your interest.
At the Guthrie Scottish Rite Temple.
Yep.
And so somewhere there's a picture floating around of a 20-year-old me standing in front of, because again, George Washington and the founding fathers was how I got interested. And there's a huge portrait of George Washington there.
Right in front of the staircase.
And there's a picture of me in front of it, not yet a Mason.
Yep.
And so we got to talking about it, and that was how I found out that your uncle was also a member.
Yep, my Uncle Mike.
And so your Uncle Mike is my top line signer.
Yep.
And your teacher
Gary McDowell.
Gary McDowell is my second line signer.
Yes. Now the funnier thing about that is, if you remember, right after we had the dance. We had gone over, after we had come home, remember we went and had Christmas dinner over at Ann and Mike's, because we did that every year.
Right.
And we went over to Christmas dinner. And while we were at Christmas dinner, that's how you and Uncle Mike started talking about it. And then he knew that you were going to turn 21 in April. Mm-hmm. And we had started talking about it. Uncle Mike was like, absolutely, we'll get you a petition. And it was funny, it was finding your second line signer that was the hardest thing. That was even what Uncle Mike said, because we had to get you the second line signer. And I had asked Gary McDowell. Gary McDowell was like, I don't know about this long-haired kid.
That's right, because my hair was super long.
Yep. He was a little hesitant. And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, please. He took my words of advice. And he actually told me in an email that he had sent a few months ago that he was very proud that I actually saw what he didn't and convinced him into doing it for me.
I'm the diamond in the rough.
That's right. You're the diamond in the rough.
Are you a part of any of the ladies' organizations?
Yes. For those of you who didn't know, because I was so active in Oklahoma Rainbow and I was Grand Officer, my grandmother wanted me to join Eastern Star then. And my mother asked her to not push me, to let me focus on my Rainbow career until I earned my majority, because I was so active, and she didn't want to take away from Rainbow because of how busy I already was between Rainbow and ROTC, and even having, if you remember, I had a full-time job at the same time too. Yeah. So my mom asked my grandmother to be like, hey, look, as soon as she's out of Rainbow, she'll join Eastern Star. My grandmother said, since we were having to wait and you were going through your Masonry, we had to wait until you became a Master Mason. Even Grandma was like, yes, you guys can join together, and that's what we were waiting on. And then we wound up moving to Phoenix, and it just all kind of got discombobulated.
Right. Well, and I became a Master Mason through Chandler Lodge there in December of 98. Wow.
Yeah.
December of 98. But our son was born in April of 99.
Yep.
And even from the beginning, so he did have some health issues. And
yeah,
so
Alex was a very sick kid because he was in and out of the hospital every 6 months from the time he was born.
Right.
With some sort of either he had RSV or pneumonia.
Yeah.
Until he was 8.
And I stepped away from Masonry for quite a while until... Geez, and looking back at it, it was, 2016, I think, when I started getting active again?
Yep, Joey's 10 years old.
Right, and so that entire time, though, not part of Eastern Star.
Nope.
It wasn't until we came back from the Philippines in 2012.
Yep.
And your grandmother was sick.
Yes, very sick. My grandmother was very sick, and you wanted to help me keep my promise to her. You started trying to show that you were a Master Mason, and that became a whole ordeal. And that took a lot longer than we were ever expecting, because we would call all the time. You would call, what, once, twice, 3 times a year trying to find your stuff from Oklahoma?
Yeah, and the difficulty there was because I was a courtesy candidate, and so paperwork gets a little weird. So our Arizona, who did the work by courtesy, they don't keep those records at all. I guess it hadn't been quite reported properly in Oklahoma, and so every time I would call in, I would speak to the Grand Secretary. They couldn't find my information, and it wasn't until past Grandmaster Bobby Laws, who was Grand Secretary.
Love Bobby Laws.
He found my information, and that was when I was able to get reinstated.
Yep.
Yeah.
We got you reinstated, and then we decided that you actually wanted me to go with you, which I thought was really, really cool, because you had reached out to 148.
Right.
And 148's like, hey, come up for dinner. And then they were like, bring your wife, and you're like, really? And they were like, yeah, because that's when...
That was when we first met Rit and Gabriel.
Yeah, I was about to say we met Rit and Gabriel that night, and Billy Moore.
Right.
And then we met Greg.
Right, and Will Weir.
And Will, yeah, I mean, we met all of them that night. Like, everybody was there, and it was a great turnout.
Yeah, no, and it worked out perfectly fine.
And it was really wonderful because we walked in, they didn't even know who we were. We walked in with open arms, which was amazing. I've never been greeted like that as an outsider, per se. coming in without knowing people already, if that makes sense. Because most of the time it's a little like off-putting and everything, but it wasn't. Like they were like, yeah, come on in, make a plate, have dinner, let's sit down and talk. And we sat down next to Gabe and Rit, and I was sitting next to Billy Moore. That's how come I remember Billy so well. And then Greg was sitting next to you.
The other brother Billy.
Yep, the other brother Billy. My other favorite Billy. But we sat down and we had dinner, and when we left, you're like, so what do you think? And I was like, the dues were really steep, and I was not happy about that, if you remember.
Yeah.
But when I was talking with Greg and talking with Billy and Gabriel and Rit, and they're like, no, we do so much other things. You get dinner every single month, and they're like, your spouses and your family can come. So like, we've brought the boys up there before. They have a family day, they have all these other deals. You have their annual banquet every year, and everything's paid for. We don't have to pay for any of it. All we do is show up. And I was like, okay, you know what, I didn't like the dues. But once I saw what we were getting for the dues, I was like, absolutely. It was totally worth it. Like, they sold me on the first day.
Well, and from a past master standpoint that's had to do lodge budgets, that's called right-sizing your dues, right? And making sure that your members get the value for what you're paying. Because I hate to say it, but the 365... Well, this is something that I tell brothers all the time, is if your dues are properly set, and you're offering value for the dues to your membership, you can have higher dues and you'll be worth it. And that's why I tell people that you can have a lodge that charges $50 and you don't get your value. And I'm not making a comment about any specific lodge. There's lodges that keep their dues dirt cheap, but they don't really offer a value for their members. And then you have other lodges that charge a very steep price, but the value proposition I feel is higher, and that's what makes all the difference.
When you told me the dues, I was not happy, because my dues, even for what I was in, but I mean I was only in a youth group, but mine was $20, and I was like, holy moly, that's like outrageous. And if you remember, while we were sitting at dinner, I was asking Greg about it. I was like, what do we get out of this? Because part of our dues as Rainbow Girls, if you were in the Grand Line, they paid for you to go to Grand Assembly. You didn't have to pay to go to Grand Assembly. So that was some of the things that I wanted to know. And that's whenever he told me, we have a formal banquet every year. We have a family day every year with the whole family. It's a big barbecue, and it's wonderful. We have the dinners every single night, every single meeting. The Masons have dinner, and the families are allowed to come. So it's not just isolated to the members only. And the other thing is that don't they pay for part of Grand Lodge?
If you're an elected officer,
right,
then they pay part of it. But one thing that we do is we send our members to officer leadership training.
That's right.
Which is $250 per person, but the lodge covers it.
Yeah.
That's something that we vote on, but we're very big proponents of that. But yeah, so you get a lot of value for it.
Yeah.
And
you get a lot of return also with your investment.
Right. We get in with 148, get everything straightened out,
yep,
and then Grapevine Chapter Eastern Star is who we reached out to because they were the closest to the house.
Yes. And the funnier thing about that is that my Aunt Lynn, which is my Aunt City's sister, my Aunt Lynn was their secretary. And so when you reached out to Aunt Lynn and said, hi, my name is Billy Hamilton, and I'm looking into joining Eastern Star, and my wife, Betty. And when she read it, she was stunned because if you remember, she picked up the phone after she received the letter, and she called you, and she was like, is this my niece? Because she didn't even realize that it was me. But once she started reading it, she's like, no, this is my niece.
And that would have been around 2017, 2018?
Yeah, that was 2017. No, 2018, because we went in on May 15th of 2018, I believe it was. And we joined Eastern Star, and we were fairly active for a little bit. And then my work just got crazy, and I couldn't go because I was having to work nights.
Right.
And so it just got really crazy, and I just had to take a step back, unfortunately, from Eastern Star. Now, we still are current with our dues. We just haven't been able to go because of my work conflict schedule. But unfortunately, my Aunt Lynn passed away, so she's no longer the secretary. And then I want to say it was in May of 18 when we joined Eastern Star, and then December of 19 when I joined Daughters of the Nile.
Okay.
I think is when it was. Because I joined Daughters of the Nile. We were at the shrine.
It's a ceremonial.
The ceremonial. Okay, we were at the ceremonial.
When I went in.
Okay.
As a Shriner.
Oh, that's right. Yes, when you went in as a Shriner. That is correct. And the ladies were talking to me, and they're like, do you want to do this? And I was like, well, I don't know. And then the more they were telling me about it, the more it seemed like it was what I miss so much about Rainbow. And because I miss Rainbow every single day. Like, I really do. I wish you never majoritied out at times, because Rainbow just was such a big part of my life. But Daughters of the Nile, going through the initiation and learning about it, it has so many things that if you were a former Rainbow girl, I think you would really appreciate Daughters of the Nile because of the ritual itself. Like, the ritual is just outstanding. And so is Eastern Star. I mean, Eastern Star's ritual is just fantastic. It really is. It's such a great ritual. But with the difference between Eastern Star and Daughters of the Nile, to me, is that Daughters of the Nile, again, is to me more of that Rainbow Girl type atmosphere that I just miss. You know, they get to wear pretty crowns, and I told you I like pretty dresses and pretty crowns, and I get to wear that. And so, I mean, maybe that's what I'm drawn to, is the pretty crowns.
As I've progressed in Masonry, I've become pretty active.
Yeah.
Too active, maybe.
There
are some times when I have 6 days a week of Masonry.
Yep.
So between Lodge chapter.
When you were running for Grand Council, if you remember, I told you, I was like, after you're done running, whether you win or lose, you gotta slow down. And that was my biggest thing. I wanted you to slow down and take some time, because I had been on that path before, where it seems like every time you turn around, you're going somewhere new and you're having to go here and there and everywhere. And it does get exhausting. And it's one of those things where I didn't want you to get burned out like I did, because I did get burned out, but I was also a lot younger and I was a kid. But I didn't want you to have that same kind of thing. And you told me, you're like, okay, no matter win or lose, I'll slow down. And for the most part, you've really kept your word on that. And it's not that I want you to stop, because I don't. Because, I mean, you still do things quite often. Not as often as you were, but you usually have something about once or twice a week.
And I think the difference is, too, I don't travel as often, but I travel further.
Yes. I think that's also what it is, yeah.
Now I'm going to another state.
Right. Exactly. I think that that's my take on it, is just that, yes, you were constantly going, especially when you were running for Grand Council. But there were times, I mean, if you remember, back about, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago now, maybe a year ago now, you were gone and I didn't see you for weeks because our schedules just conflicted. And I was like, that was my biggest issue.
That's already been
about 2 years.
3 years?
3 years? Okay.
Yeah. It's been a while. So I have 2 questions for you from a spouse's perspective.
Okay.
Question number 1 would be, what are the bodies you like the most?
Okay.
The other one is, what is your favorite Masonic event?
Okay.
So which bodies do you like the most?
Blue Lodge.
Okay.
100% Blue Lodge. I love 148. Just Blue Lodge to me, because it's the foundation of everything. And I do really, really love 148. I am so glad and so blessed that we were able to be a part of such an amazing lodge. I mean, it really is. And I mean, they support so many different things. I love to see what you guys do between the things that they do for the families, but then also Masonicon. Absolutely. You know, with the other things, you guys are just so involved. And that's my favorite lodge, I guess, if you would say. Well, what was the... You
favorite
said...
Masonic body?
Yeah, so that one has to be my favorite Masonic body, but...
And when my mother passed away, actually, I remember how Rit and Gabe, they were like, do you guys need anything? Do you need us to pick up the kids at school while you take care of family business?
Yep.
You know, do you need us to send you dinner?
Yeah. They were very... And they did the same thing with your dad, too, if you remember.
Right.
I mean, the boys were a little older, but they were still calling and checking on us, and that's huge. The fact that the lodge sent flowers to both of your parents' funerals. You know, that just means a lot, because that shows that they do care about you. My favorite events?
Yes, favorite Masonic event to attend as...
SRICF.
Okay.
100% High Council.
The High Council in Louisville, Kentucky?
Yes. High Council in Louisville, Kentucky is by far the funnest thing. I've met a lot of wonderful people. Like, I got to meet Tabby and Chick Cicero, which was amazing. They are fantastic people. I also got to meet... I mean, there's so many people I got to meet, but...
Like Bob Davis?
Oh, I love Bob Davis. So, I mean, there's a lot of good people. So, Barry, and then you've got Jeff Nelson, Lisa.
The Supreme Magus.
Yeah, Supreme Magus. But then you also have Lisa, his lady. And then you also have Reed and Melissa, and you have Sarah. I'm just so bad at names. I'm telling you, Mason wives need name tags too. I'm just saying. But no, we've got a lot of... And Lisa really makes it fun for the wives. Like, so the first year I went, if you remember, we went to that haunted mansion. Mm-hmm. And I went with, well, I mean, we all went, but I was with Melissa and I was with Tabby. And we just had a fantastic time just touring the museum and the haunted mansion. And it was wonderful. And then the next year, we got to go to glass blowing. And then they had us make our own little ornament. And so I got to make my own little ornament, and it got sent back to the house. We actually got it a few months ago.
Yeah.
But it was really cool. And I mean, I look forward to it because there's so much fun things to do for the wives. Like, we are really included. Now, I really also like Masonic Week.
Okay.
Masonic Week is a blast, even though I work through most of it. I really like the ladies' luncheon and the ladies' afternoon tea. But there is so other many things in DC that I wish that they would kind of do the same things, like going on a tour, you know, which they might, but I know I work for part of it because I have my booth, but I haven't seen anything on the registration.
So I haven't seen anything for ladies' tours. I always see the ladies' luncheon and the ladies' tea.
Right, which is what we always get to go to.
It's kind of nice, though, that there's no charge for that.
Yeah,
right?
and I do love that. I love the fact that there's no charge for it. I get to run up there. You're like, I'll watch the booth. You go up there, have your tea. Go up there, have your breakfast. Because we have the breakfast, the ladies' breakfast, the ladies' afternoon tea, and the ladies' luncheon. So we have 3 different ones during that Masonic Week.
So Grand Encampment Triennial.
Love that one, too.
Is there anything for the ladies there?
They did have, I believe it was an afternoon lunch, remember?
Okay.
That one year you had to come and watch the booth for me so I could go to the lunch. Well, we've only been once because it's every 3 years. So
yeah, so
this will
Minneapolis.
be our second one.
Yeah, Salt Lake is the one coming up.
Yeah, and you did sign me up for the ladies luncheon, I think it is.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I really love when they involve the ladies too, and that is why I think I like High Council and Masonic Week and even Triennial, because they really just, they want the ladies involved. Now, I also really like when we go to Texas events, because we also have at Chapter and Council, they have the ladies luncheon as well.
Right.
And that one is really nice. And you usually get, you know, we did painting art on the vine or something like that. Painting with a twist is what it was.
Right.
You know, so those kind of things are really a lot of fun because they keep us entertained too. And I really enjoy that. That's some of my favorite things to do.
As I've gone through the different lines, I've tried to keep you involved in different ways, right? So when we have banquets or installations, I always ask, your opinion about the menus.
Yeah, which is a lot of fun. And if you notice, I'm not going to lie, anybody that's gone to any of your installations or anything like that, I go rainbow all out. Like, it sounds funny, but that's the way I have to put it, because when we do a banquet, I would do the same thing I would have done if I was in rainbow. You know, I'm going to go all out. I'm going to make it look beautiful. I'm going to decorate, and I'm going to try to really make that experience just one that's enjoyable, especially when we did your TLR one. You know, I wanted to make sure that we sent out those personal invitations and invited everybody
For the Anson Jones lecture.
Anson Jones lecture, yeah. And then we got to use the beautiful asylum for dinner, and I made sure that we decorated it and made it just as beautiful. And that's one thing. That is totally my rainbow roots, because that is what we do in rainbow.
I remember
in Oklahoma.
Chapter and council, when I went in for High Priest of Texas chapter and Thrice Illustrious Master of Texas Council, that was my first presiding
officer
installation.
Correct.
And I remember we didn't quite know what to do, and it wasn't tradition for us to have a lunch. We didn't really have a lunch or a dinner with that.
Yeah.
We were planning it for the next year when I went in as Master 148, but COVID happened.
Yep.
Yeah,
and
we had
to cancel it all, because if you remember, I had also had a cake ordered that I had to cancel.
Yeah, and that was like the day before, because they were still trying to figure out. This was in the very beginning of COVID.
Yep, and the caterer was really nice, because the people that I was ordering the cake from, they understood, and they were like, if you just call us that morning, because we told them, we're like, we know this is going to be last minute, and because I had a beautiful cake ordered for you for your installation, and yeah, COVID was like, nope, can't do it. So.
Well, and it was the Temple Association that at the last minute they decided we are not going to have any meals in the building because they were looking to limit.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
100%. I completely agreed with it. So, and I'm very thankful that our caterers and the baker and everything were very, very understandable. And the fact that none of them made us pay for anything, that they gave us all of our deposits and everything back.
Right.
Which they didn't have to do, which was very nice.
The first installation we really got to go all out with,
your Knight Templar,
was Worth Commandery.
Yeah.
And we kind of set the mold there, because
and that's the way that's what it was going to be for your Blue Lodge too, if we would have been able to do it. Because if you remember, I went all out, and a lot of the stuff that we used at your Knight Templar installation, I had already bought when you were Master, so we didn't have to buy very many things, because I had already purchased all of that stuff. So it was one of those things where it sucked that we didn't get to do it and we also didn't get the banquet year either, because we couldn't do the formal banquet that they do for 148 year. 148 year was very lackluster when it came to that.
Right. Well,
the banquets and the meals and the dinners, but you can't.
We didn't even meet for half the year.
Because of COVID, and you guys were doing a lot of stuff through Zoom and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, but COVID happened. I mean, we can't deny that COVID happened. So,
right.
I mean...
So, Worth Commandery, we went all out.
Yes.
And we invited all of the commanderies in the whole North Texas area.
Yep.
Lone Star Grand Commandery, Prince Hall affiliated. All their grand officers were there. We had almost 100 people there.
Yeah.
And...
Your dad was there?
Yeah,
your dad was very proud of you. Your dad was there. Both your boys were there. Well, all three of your boys, sorry.
Right.
Your three boys were there. Your granddaughter was there. My parents were there. Now, I know that Gary McDowell wanted to show up, if you remember. He wanted to be there, and he couldn't. But I was so glad when he actually got to show up for your Anson Jones lecture. You should tell him about that, because that was really cool, because he got to remember his books.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
He came in with his walker.
So Dr. Rick Berman, past master of Quattro Coronati and Masonic author of a lot of really good books, was my speaker. He was my Anson Jones lecturer for my year as master of Texas Law Research. And we made arrangements for Gary McDowell, knowing each other for so long. We were able to get him to Fort Worth to attend the Anson Jones lecture. It's the first time we've ever gotten to sit and lodge together. And he walked in. He has mobility issues. He uses a walker. And I remember I delayed the meeting a couple of minutes because I knew he was texting me the entire time. I knew he was on his way up, and I wanted to meet him at the door and escort him in. And so I did that. And after we had the business meeting, he came up, and Dr. Berman and I were speaking at the front, and Brother Gary came up, and he had a couple of Dr. Berman's books on his walker, and there were books that he was actually reading. And when he came up, Dr. Berman looked down and he's like, "Oh, are these for me to sign?" And he picked them up and just started signing them. And Gary was so excited about that.
Yeah, and those just happened to be books that he was reading because Gary brings books with him everywhere, and those were just happened to be the ones he was reading at the time. So it was very cool. It really was, and I know that's probably one of Gary's favorite memories because he loves the fact that we are so involved, that we are very much a Masonic family, because not many of the Rainbow Girls, that besides his girls, of course, they're not active anymore. You know, they're not in it like I am. And he's so proud of you as a Mason. He really is. He's like, every time he sees you, he's like, "I'm just so proud, and I'm so happy that I gave that long-haired kid a chance." It means a lot to him seeing you thrive as much as you are in Masonry.
Well, but on those types of events, I think that's really the opportunity that Masons can involve their partners in making those events even more special.
Now, one other thing I would suggest for women who are not involved in Masonry, who don't know much about it, and even if they are, they need to take Lane's class. That is something that I know Lane has a lot of really great information, and I'm sure that Masons who are very involved can even reach out to Lane. And I know Lane will talk to anybody. He's such a great guy. But he has this wonderful program for ladies that actually talks about how do we help out as wives. And that was one of the things that he had in there, was how I helped out with the banquet and stuff like that. But I mean, that was just going to be me anyway, but that was in there, showing that we can help out with the banquets and help decorate. And it's not just that we are there to feed you guys and clean up. That's not what he's getting at. He is there to show that there are different ways that we can support our spouses and make things better for not just him but us as well. And then, of course, not to get on the morbid subject, but also the fact that he's like, talk about funeral, talk about how they want to have their Masonic funeral to be, because that's where a lot of spouses who have active Masons and they're not active, that's one thing that is very lacking, because they don't know what to do. And I know that we have talked about it, and I kind of know what you want, but we don't have yours set in stone either. And that's something that we all need to talk about.
Well, we have talked about it a little bit.
Yes.
And I did write an article about it. It's directed more for the Masons on having the conversation with their family to direct what they want, right? Because a lot of, as master especially, I know there are a lot of times when a family doesn't know what to do, right? They know that their husband wants a Masonic funeral service, but they don't know how to go about it. They don't know how to contact the lodge. I've received calls from people who were either trying to figure out who do they talk to, and I try to get them in contact with the worshipful master or secretary of their husband's home lodge. We've been on the other side too, to where we've had people reach out to us, and sometimes it's last minute because they spent so much time trying to find the right person, that we find out that there is a brother of ours who has passed away and has moved into another area, and so we have to make arrangements for that, because that's our duty as Masons, is to make sure that that final rite gets done properly.
Right, and I think that that's definitely something that the spouses need to, like, because I told you, when I took Lane's class, it was so informative. It really was. Because, I mean, I knew a lot already, but I felt like he shed a light on even more that I didn't even think about, because I wasn't thinking about it.
And a lot of people don't realize that just about every Masonic body has its own burial ritual.
Correct. Which that was one thing I did learn.
The Scottish Rite has their own ceremony. Blue Lodge has a couple here in Texas. Chapter, council.
Commandery.
Yeah, the commandery one. And there's a couple of different options there too, right? So there is a beautiful Knight Templar burial ceremony. But there's also the ability for the commandery to stand guard over the casket during the service itself or during the viewing. And that's touching. I've actually been on that detail before, to where you have a Sir Knight at the head in the foot of the casket with their sword drawn, standing at attention, and it's a good way for the commandery too, especially if the person was active. We had Sir Knight Mill Haygood recently. Well, it's been several years now, but the entire commandery went to the funeral home, and we all got to pay our last respects as a guard during his service. And that's a nice piece too. But yeah, there are so many different Masonic rites.
Right, and Rainbow even has theirs. And a lot of people don't know this, but me even being a former Rainbow girl, I can still ask for the Rainbow rites. Or the Rainbow funeral service, if that's what I want. And the same thing with Eastern Star and Daughters of the Nile. They all have it too. And now I haven't seen, the only one I've actually seen firsthand is Rainbow, because I didn't see, and I did see Eastern Star when my Aunt Lynn passed.
Yeah.
I saw Eastern Star and I saw Rainbow. So, okay, enough of that. Well, what
okay. So your partner as being help with planning installations and special events, I guess I would say it's kind of nice also to consider that it should be taken on as
a partnership.
As a partnership, yeah. And I hate to say it, I always feel weird with a lot of lodges, especially if they have an Eastern Star chapter. They just assume that, the ladies will cook and clean for us. I think that's one of the reasons why when we had our events, I look for a caterer, right? Mm-hmm. It's like you don't have to worry about cooking. Let's do it right. So
yeah.
But however, I think it should be something that if it's something that your partner enjoys doing, involve them in it. So the decorations, right? You like doing decoration.
I love decorating.
So that's a natural fit. If your partner doesn't like decorating, then it's okay to skip on that. Cooking. If your partner doesn't like to cook, again, catering's a fantastic option.
Not a big fan of cooking. I mean, I love cooking, you know that. I just don't like cooking for large groups. I've had to do that with Rainbow and everything, and it is very trying. I mean, it's really, really hard. People don't realize that when you're cooking because I knew that your Anson Jones lecture, and I knew that your installation for your commandery, I knew that those were both going to be huge because we had RSVPs out.
Yeah.
And so I knew, and I'm like, I can't imagine cooking for 100 people. I've had to do that for Rainbow, and I can't do that by myself. Like, I would have needed help, and I would have had to call in reinforcements,
Well, and sometimes it's a special moment, too, when you go down to the caterer and you get to try dishes together.
Yeah, that was fun.
And it's a nice, it's like, oh, what do you think of this? And you get to talk. I think it can be a wonderful opportunity together.
Yeah, because when we did your commandery one, they had us go down there, and we got to try a couple of different things of their main courses that we were interested in. Mm. And then we also got to try like all of their sides, which was crazy. And it was just it was a lot of fun. And then of course, now this is back to our wedding, our anniversary, but we did the same thing, if you remember, because of where I was getting the cake from, because when you became master of the lodge, I was going to get your cake from them as well. And so we already knew what cake we were ordering, but if you remember, we got to go down and taste like each little different piece of the cake to where we decided, and we're like, nope, we want the amaretto one. So I already knew the cake I was going to get when I was doing yours. It was just one of those things where
that was a bunch of sweet cake in an early morning.
Yeah.
I think that's what gave me diabetes.
I don't think so, but we'll just let you lead with that.
It was trying all that delicious cake.
It was, but the amaretto one, you have to admit, was the best.
It was good, yeah, but there were some that were too sweet.
Yeah, they're chocolate, and I didn't think you could make chocolate even sweeter than chocolate, but it was pretty sweet.
So, okay, so that is, something that you can do together.
Yes,
I think that
absolutely.
that can be a fun event together.
Yes.
The decorating, one thing we did learn is, so it's usually easy to find people to help you set up.
Yes.
Make sure you have people to help you tear down.
Yeah, because that is the one thing, because we did have a lot of people help us set up with the Anson Jones lecture, and then it wound up because we had to get out of the temple, by 11?
Right.
And we didn't get out of there until midnight, and I felt horrible because after everything closed down, it was just us cleaning up.
Well, and that's on me because, again, I had people volunteer to set up, and it totally passed my mind to ask, hey, do you mind staying for a few minutes afterwards?
Yeah, because all you need, and that's the thing, you don't need too many people, because setting up is a little bit harder. We're taking it down. If you just have like 3 or 4 people stand back just to get rid of the chairs, because if you remember, the chairs alone is what took us the longest, because they had to haul those back downstairs.
And then hauling everything to the dumpsters.
Yeah, and that too. And the trash. So, and our kids weren't able to stay because Zach had to take your dad back because of your dad had to get up and go to work in the morning, so he had to take your dad back to the hotel. And Zach took Joey because Joey had school. So, and everybody else had left. So, yeah, it was just you and me.
As we near the end of this, I did have a question. I heard your advice about talking with Lane Pierce about the class and the advice that he gives during the officer leadership training for the Grand Lodge of Texas. Is there any other advice you would have for partners of active Masons?
If they want to be involved, just ask them to go to banquets. Start out very small. Like, if you know that they're going to Grand Lodge and there's a formal banquet, be like, hey, can I go to the formal banquet with you? If you want to see what it's like and get a little bit here and there. Because now that we have been so involved, but I mean, I was going to do it anyway, but with us being so involved, we also go to like the AMD dinners once a month. And there's a couple other things that we do that they're a little outside of the norm. That's the biggest thing, is that if they just want to check out the atmosphere, see what it's like, start out with the banquets first. If your husband asks you, hey, do you want to go to this banquet with me? Then be like, yeah, let's give it a shot. Because to me, the banquets is what really kind of pushed me into your atmosphere. Because if you remember, it was just a little bit of banquets here and there. You're like, hey, do you want to go to this banquet with me? And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? And then it got more involved, and now I travel the country with you, where I probably wouldn't have done that before. I've been like, you go do your thing. No, I like going with you.
And I do know a lot of brothers that do have partners that are like, you do you, and I'll be here.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, I really do love the fact that you actually reach out to me and be like, hey, do you want to go to this banquet with me? Matter of fact, you just asked me if I wanted to go to one with you. And I was like, well, I think it's conflicting with my work this time. But, most of the time, if I can get it off, I'm going to go. It's not just to support you, but it's just to go and have a good time and spending time with your spouse in something that they love. And that's the thing. That's the biggest reason why I go to these events with you, is because I know how much you love these events. I know how much you enjoy going and doing these things. So because you love and enjoy them so much, how can I get involved? Well, you know what? Let me go put on a pretty dress and go to a banquet and have good food. You know what I mean? Where the only thing that would make it better is if I got to wear a crown. I mean, but that's just me. I like to sparkle and shine, so...
Well, do you have any advice for someone who's interested in becoming a Mason and how they can have a conversation with their significant other, especially when it comes to dues and time commitments?
So, yeah, that is a great thing, because that is very good advice for anybody who wants to become in Masonry, who may be married to somebody or engaged to somebody who's never been involved in something like this, where you were blessed that I already kind of knew everything. I knew what I was getting into, and I knew what you were getting into. So I was very fortunate in that aspect. But like you said, They need to sit down, and we've done the same thing, and I have told you, if you remember, I told you straight out, if you join one more organization, we are getting a divorce. I told you that. And you're like, well, how about if it's only
invitational?
Invitational. Well, I didn't realize you were already in everything, and now all you have left is invitationals, and that's not fair. So, but we do have it all written down. We have written down, what you pay for dues every single year. We have all of it listed out, so we know exactly how much we're paying, and are we okay with it? And you even asked me, and like even this year, we're like, you know what? I'm not involved in this one anymore as much, so maybe I should take a step back and just do this one.
Right.
Instead of being a member of like 4 councils, you're only going to be a member of 1 council.
Right.
Instead of being a member of like 5 Blue Lodges, you're going to be a member of 1 Blue Lodge, which that really does make a difference.
In the research lodges.
Well, yeah, those don't count. Research lodges I will let you have because you are a researcher. Like, that's your thing. That's something that you love. I mean, I knew I married somebody who loves books. I mean, heck, we're sitting in the middle of your library. I made you. I knew what I was getting into, but I think that is a very important conversation that they need to have together, because somebody spending $365 a year in dues, unless it's like the Fort Worth Club or something like that, they're going to be like, wait, what is this? You need to be able to explain to them why this is important to you, and also figure out, hey, you can have, and you do it to me all the time, you're like, what's your one thing you want to do? Even if mine didn't have anything to do with Masonry, if I told you I want to go and do a cooking class once a week or once a month or whatever, and it cost me $365, you're going to be like, okay, let's do it. That's the other thing, is compromise. Compromise is the biggest thing, and just make sure that you can afford it, because when Alex was really sick and he was very young, we couldn't afford you being a Mason. And that is one of the reasons why you took a step back too. It's because we just couldn't afford it. And that's honest. But when you compromise and you talk about it and you get on the same page together, I think Masonry is a wonderful, wonderful thing for both people. I don't think it's just for that one person. I think it can be very much a family organization, which is what Masonry is.
And I think brothers need to take a moment and talk it over with their significant other also, and figure out, how involved can I be, and limit themselves accordingly. Take an assessment and figure out, how long is my cable tow really? Because when you join as many bodies as I'm in, annual dues are north of $2,000, right? But if you are a part of that, then you need to be active with it too. And so you need to realistically say, how much time can I spend away from the house at this time? Am I in a state, are we in a state in our relationship? I guess that kind of brings us to the end, and I really appreciate it for all the listeners out there. You heard us talk about it here. You've heard us talk about it on other podcasts. Texas Masonicon is coming up, and we have the most worshipful past Grand Master of Oklahoma, Bob Davis, is going to be our keynote speaker.
And he's amazing. If you've never heard him speak, I have seen that man speak now 3 different times, and every time it's moving.
Inspirational.
Very much so.
Yeah,
I love Bob Davis.
We have also speaking for us is Adam Kendall. He's coming out from California. He's the junior warden for Quattro Coronati Lodge.
Oh, that's very cool.
He's the editor for the Haredom book of the Scottish Rite Research Society. So this year it's going to be, it's always a good year, but this year I'm really excited for the lineup that we have. It just continues to be good. So that is Texas Masonicon. That is going to be August 2nd and 3rd. You can find us on Facebook, either at the Fort Worth 148 Facebook page or Texas Masonicon. Texas Masonicon is Mason Icon. I like the way that Gabriel does that, .com, and tickets are on sale. So thank you so much. Thank you to my wife for being my guest today. And we hope that you enjoyed the conversation, and we hope that you keep listening. All right, this is Billy Hamilton signing off.
And this is Bette Hamilton signing off.